welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about Planet of Fire, written by Peter Grimwood and is directed by Fiona Cummins. This is a 4-part adventure, and it is the penultimate story of Peter Davison, being his second to last adventure. This has actually 2 versions that survive in the BBC archives. One is the traditional aired 4-episode version, but for the special DVD case, after Fiona Cummins had great experience with to entertain with working on Enlightenment, they decided to make another special movie length edition for Planet of Fire, which is the version I watched. Now, I don't know if anything has been deleted or put on, or is there anything different compared story-wise, apart from right at the very start in this. Mainly, it is the main touch-ups are of the effects, and add in just a whole lot of fire special effects onto the planet. So now you can't criticize Planet of Fire for not having a lot of fire. Any scene which is set outdoors has a fire effect. It might look a bit goofy, a bit out of place when you've got this really old footage and it's a backdrop to these very modern but very low budget CGI flame effects, and like basically all the color grading is onto like maximum red, and there's a lot of smoke and effects, and I think it isn't particularly great, but in terms of watching the story, it does help bring out the atmosphere of the story, despite it not looking particularly great in terms of a special edition. They also add in a pre-title scene, what I've known as a cold starter, a scene that takes place before the opening, which they reshot with Fiona Cummins actually returning to the director's seat to film a little bit where we see the spaceship crash land on Sarn, the planet that this story revolves around. So that's really cool, and of course with the special edition they've edited it so that instead of 4 parts, it's a movie length epic, so that you don't get cliffhangers constantly bursting up. And I think mainly for this story, I don't feel like it works all the time, but I think for this story it does help with the pacing. So just a disclaimer, I watched the special edition for this marathon and not the original aired versions, mainly because for me personally, I get the more enjoyment out of this. This is also one of the first DVDs that I owned. It came in a box set with The King's Demons, the Chameleon duology, as Chameleon returns in this story, which would be his final appearance in classic Doctor Who. And so, I have a lot of memories with it. And in terms of the fan base, it's a very forgotten story. A lot of people don't talk about this one, and when they do, they cite that it's good, it's okay, pretty forgettable, nothing really strikes out here, and a lot of people just don't talk about this story that much, or at least that's what I find. So anyway, to the story. The story actually cuts off after we get the pre-title sequence, by introducing us to Perry Gilliam Brown, an American who's come to this Lasdora Islands, and she's there with her stepfather Brian, and they have a little debate as Perry basically says that she's bored on this island and she wants to go exploring around Africa. She's met for some really nice British guys, and they're going to travel to Africa, but her stepfather, I'm sure it's Harold, doesn't say, but anyway, Harold basically states that you're not going. How dare you? You've basically thrown your life away because you spent all your money on this trip, and you cancelled your plane ticket back to New York, which is where she's from. And so there's a bit of debate, and on his boat he's discovered a piece of metal, and he believes it could be platinum, and it has this weird triangular symbol on it, and it seems to be giving off some sort of signal, as the Doctor and Turlough, after talking about how much they just hate the Daleks after the conclusion of Resurrection of the Daleks, go trying to find this tracker after Chameleon seems to be suffering from some sort of fit as he's connected to the TARDIS making some repairs. Now, Turlough looks at some of the coordinates that Chameleon has been connected, and they seem to be coordinates from the planet Trion, which scares Turlough to the point where he actually sabotages the Doctor's console room. But the Doctor quickly realises that what's been going on, and basically tells Turlough, "Why are you sabotaging my ship? Why are you stopping Chameleon from getting better?" And Turlough basically explains that Trion is his home planet, and that's where he's come from, and he's scared to go back. However, it turns out that the Chameleon has actually set up the coordinates to land on Earth, on the same place where Perry is, and they go looking for a distress signal believed to be of Trion descent, and they first go around exploring the place where the Doctor and Turlough meet Perry's Perry's stepfather, and the Doctor, to try and get some help, tries to get two trackers. So Turlough heads back to the TARDIS, only to find Perry drowning in the water down in the sea, as she explains that, as we see that Harold, her stepfather, took her to the boat because he says that he left his wallet there, and then he left her stranded on this boat so that she doesn't go on this trip, basically keeping her against her will a bit. Perry's tries to swim off, taking this platinum thing with her, hoping that she could sell it so that she can make money off it so that she can get her plane trip. But she starts drowning, and Turlough goes rescuing her, takes her to the TARDIS, looks inside her bag to find the platinum, and sees the symbol on it and realises it's from Trion, and tries to basically dismantle it before the Doctor arrives back on the TARDIS to state that the signal has moved, and basically revealing that Turlough has found this distress signal, and that basically that's what's going on. So really fun thing to note about this story at the start is the scene in which Perry is drowned, starts drowning. When they were filming this, it was actually filmed on location, which was really cool, which really gives this story a very high budget feel, almost James Bond-like. But anyway, when they were filming this scene, a German nudist actually came to Nicola Bryant's rescue, and when she explained that it was just for a filming and shot, this nudist got very upset and actually tried to sabotage the filming. So the Doctor's greatest villain in this is not any of the villains in the story, it's a German nudist. That's really funny to note. So let's talk about Nicola Bryant. Now, Nicola Bryant, as Perry, will become the companion, a new companion for the series, as her and Peter Davison will have two stories, and she will continue out in the next incarnation. And I really like Nicola Bryant. She gives this really sweet but also naive performance, as she seems like a girl who's much more younger than she initially appears, and that she kind of goes into things head first. And I really like her performance, but what kind of lets her down in this story is her role in the adventure, because throughout the story she is getting captured, she is taken against people's will, and she doesn't have really much to do in terms of character in this adventure. She just seems to be going on along for the ride whilst all this bad stuff happens to her, and her real only contribution to the plot is to get a device which the Doctor from the TARDIS back to the Doctor, and so the Doctor and Turlough track this signal to another planet, the planet Sarn, and here we get the majority of the plot, as we get introduced to the civilians on this planet, a almost Egyptian-like culture. I wouldn't say Egyptian, but they're very, with robes and the constant heat. But anyway, which gives this story a very nice looking costumes and department and stuff. And so the Doctor and Turlough try to explore this area, and this culture basically believes that that there is this fire god that protects them from the mountain, and to please him they sometimes sacrifice people to the flame. And so they believe that the Doctor and Turlough initially are strangers there to help them to try and rescue them. However, not all as it seems, as Chameleon transforms into Perry's stepfather and claims that contact has been made. He presses the TARDIS control systems. Perry's like, what's the matter? She starts screaming and in fear as her stepfather transforms into none other than Anthony Ainley as the Master. Yes, this is a Master story. And Anthony Ainley kind of alters his performance a bit for his chameleon part. He wears a really cool suit, which I kind of wished the Master would wear more often, even though it's technically not the Master, it's Chameleon being controlled by the Master. And something about Anthony Ainley's performance here I just absolutely love. There's a lot of scenes where you just see him kind of just smiling to himself in the background, and it just makes you fill with glee. And something about his face and his reactions to things, he's so into the role. He is just so goddamn into the role that it makes you really hard to believe that he acted any other way. He is so 100% convicted to this Master. And whilst the Doctor and Turlough seem to be hesitant to play along with this religious and being like, there's no such God. The fire is just the volcano basically about to erupt, and that you should all get away from this mountain. All these tunnels are leading, gonna let all the lava come in and kill everybody. But the Master actually plays along as Perry takes a part of the TARDIS paneling and escapes, whilst the Master goes looking after her. He bumps into one of the leaders, and basically the Master tricks him into believing that he is working for the god, the fire god, and that the Doctor is some sort of evil entity that is trying to make people lose their faith. And so we have this dilemma, but there's also the dilemma of a bunch of wreckage is scattered around this mountain, and Turlough recognizes it as Trion technology, escaped from a Trion ship. And originally, Turlough thinks that these people are Trions, but they have no idea what they're on about. And one of them seems to have the same mark of that symbol on his arm, but there. And it's revealed as well that Turlough also has this mark, and he believes that this man is his brother, as he knew that that there would be a ship around here that would which would have contained his father and his infant brother at the time. And when the ship crashed, killing everybody but the infant then grew older and became this chosen one, as we say. Now, so the majority of the plot is basically just a run around as the Doctor and the Master are battling each other and trying to get Chameleon on their sides. And Turlough and Perry later join up and team up to figure out what's going on. And Turlough even tries to get the signal working and tries to use this machinery to make the fire less dangerous for everybody, and reveals that there is some sort of mystical flame that actually heals people, to which the Doctor states that this flame would be very valuable for any Time Lord which is struggling to regenerate. So, so the plot kind of then takes a kind of halt for the moment to let some character moments and some just moments to occur. Now, Fiona Cummins, as you might have realised, is one of my favourite directors of the classic era. This would be both the last script written by Peter Grimwood and is the last story directed by Fiona Cummins. And she brings her iconic cinematic feel to the story. And as I've stated before, her style is mainly just making everything look like it's come straight out of a movie, like a cinema, and that could do with a lot of the location shooting, as the first part of the story is set on the location of Lanzadro. I don't know how to pronounce it, I do apologise. I believe it's in Spain. But anyway, they actually shot the desert landscape on this area, which is, I believe, the first time Doctor Who filmed on location outside of Europe. But I could be wrong. But anyway, this gives this story a much more high-budget feeling. Almost, like I said, James Bond feeling, as we get a few scenes of characters just running around, chasing after each other through this beautiful landscape. Like I said, in the original edition, it's mainly like a desert, whilst in the special edition they had a lot of flame effects to make it feel more like an inferno. And this is what I think really why the movie length version of this actually really helps with the enjoyment of the story, as Fiona Cummins directs this story as a movie and then it's edited as a movie. You see what I'm getting to? The story has a very fluorescent feel, and that makes this story a lot more enjoyable in terms of a visual experience. It might even be one of my favourite stories to look at, as Fiona Cummins has just some great directed moments and gets some really great close-ups of Peter Davison and Anthony Ainley. She might suffer a little bit when it comes to Mark Strutson's and Nicola Bryant's performances, but she does a fantastic job with everyone else. And so we get a lot of great scenery. The story just looks really nice. That's all I got to say on that. The leader of this tribe, you might recognise his voice, and for those of you who can't really get it click, he is the guy with the funky mask in Flash Gordon, so that's really cool. And yeah, that's just really, really cool. But let's talk about Peter Grimwood's writing in this story, because this story mainly is a lot of setup, and when we get halfway through the story, it's mainly just our characters running around after each other, and there's nothing really this story has anything to say, although it does have something to say about the Master taking advantage of this culture's religion and using them for his own ends. One of my favourite scenes is after he's convinced everybody, he takes Perry prisoner and he tells them to move this block upwards, and if so, they will get riches beyond their dreams. And so they help him put his TARDIS up. And when one of them shouts, "So where are these gifts that we were promised?" He pushes Perry into his TARDIS. He turns around and he goes, "Gullible idiots," and goes into his TARDIS and flies off. I really like that bit. And so the Master helps, Perry helps the Master take this box outside of the TARDIS, which is this room where underneath the volcano, at the heart of it, where this flame that they can transform it into blue flame, which will help any healing properties. And this is probably one of my favourite performances of Anthony Ainley. As him and Chameleon, he's so convicted about the flame, and he's like, "With this power, I have the most powerful source in the entire universe." And like I said, he gets really into it. And later on, Perry opens the box to reveal the Master, the real Master's in it, now the size of an inch. He's about that tall. And we get, again, this, I think with a weaker director, this effect might have not worked, but we get some great high angle, low angle shots with Anthony Ainley, which gives it a very cinematic feel, which is, like I said, Fiona Cummins, she just can't do no wrong in terms of making a story just look as good as it possibly can be. But the Doctor quickly comes in to try and rescue Perry, and whilst the Master's distracted trying to get this flame to work, he resets the machinery to basically not let the fire use its healing properties as it should do. And we get a really iconic scene in which Chameleon is about to he puts the box on into the flame, and he has the tissue compression eliminator, and he's about to fire at the Doctor, but the Doctor prohibits any psychic connection, and what that does is it makes Chameleon basically have a fit, and he collapses in amounts of pain, and the Doctor and Perry look at his body as Chameleon asks the Doctor to end his life, to kill him. And the Doctor turns to Perry and asks her basically to leave her down for a bit. And he gets the tissue compression eliminator. And with great sadness, with Peter Davison's performance, just points the gun at Chameleon and kills him. So this is the end of Chameleon. It's a very strange how we have a companion who was missing throughout most of his tenure, only appearing in his first story and his last story. But I would have really liked to see Chameleon, and as I think I've stated in The King's Demons, I didn't understand why they shelved him. I mean, okay, his computer wasn't working very properly, and he had trouble because the person who operated it passed away before any other stories could be made. However, they established the Chameleon can transform his appearance, so why didn't they take advantage of that? I will never know. I will never know why they never took advantage of that. Maybe without our knowledge, he has been travelling around as Turlo or Tegan, whilst the Doctor wanders around. Hell, even the Doctor could have been Chameleon. We don't know. Maybe in the Five Doctors, the Doctor's not actually there. It was Chameleon the whole time. Who knows? Who could possibly know? And the Master starts rejuvenating. He becomes back to his normal size as the fire cures him, and he states to the Doctor that he's going to use this to basically become one of the most powerful beings in the universe. However, the flame turns red again, and the Master's like, Doctor, please don't let me die. I'll get you anything you want. Please, you won't do this to your own. Ah! And then he disappears, presumably dying. So this story actually is one of those cases where the Master seemingly dies. And I really like how Peter Davison just does nothing. He just literally looks at the Master, walks up to the flame like in the middle of the room, and just stares at him, not even replying, leaving the Master to die. And after the scene of Chameleon being destroyed, it kind of has this kind of feeling that the Doctor is so pissed that not only did he torture Chameleon, but it put him in a situation where he had to mercy kill Chameleon. He had to put him out of his misery, and because of that, he just could not forgive the Master that moment, and so he just let him die, which is which is kind of a cool comparison when we go look at Chameleon's first appearance, and we get a scene in which the Doctor was allowed to let the Master die, but he tries to stop him, only to let the scene commence when somebody else could have taken his place, and so he lets the Master die with a heavy heart. But here it doesn't seem like he has any remorse for the Master. He just wants him dead. And yeah, this resurrection of the Daleks really affects the Doctor. And this would be, in my opinion, the second of a loose, unofficial trilogy in which the fifth Doctor is basically put to his limits, and that his companions die or leave in horrific ways, and the Doctor just can't take it, and he's struggling to himself because he tries his best to save everybody, to do the best he can, but he's constantly failing, and it really gets to our Doctor, which means that Peter Davison's Doctor is the first Doctor since William Hartnell's first Doctor to have a real character arc. And that's not to take anything away from Patrick Troughton, John Pertwee and Tom Baker, but they didn't really have a sense of an arc, which is, in my opinion, it's not a necessary thing, as long as you have the arc in individual stories. But Peter Davison was the first, since the first Doctor, to have an arc that travels through most different stories. Now back to Turlo. He had a mission to try and save everybody from the flame by reconnecting a device onto the crashed ship, which we see at the start of the special edition, which is his father's prison ship. He explains to the Doctor that there was a war, and his father led a group of rebellions which were on the wrong side of the law, and Turlo was also part of that war. And basically, when the war was over and they were political prisoners, what they do is that they send off people to different planets to be exiled, essentially. And so his father was sentenced to Sarn, and Turlo was sentenced to Earth, which is when we saw him in Mandred Undead. And this story then basically has him coming face to face with his past as he decides, right, I'm going to stop being a coward, I'm going to send the Tryon ship here, and I'm going to stop running away from my problems. A lot of people say that Frontios is the story that gives Turlough a real depth in character. But in my opinion, it's Planet of the Fire. And when the Tryons appear, one of them, the captain of the ship that saves everybody, basically explains to Turlough that political prisoners aren't exile anymore. There's finally peace, and you're allowed to return home if you want. And so Turlough turns to the Doctor at the end of the story and is like, I'm not coming back. My exile has been lifted and I want to go home. I'm going to go home. And with that, the Doctor and Turlough part ways, making Turlough the last companion since Nardole, to the last companion in the classic era, a New Who until Nardole, I meant to say, to be a non-Earth companion, and he would be the last in a long line of companions where there was always at least one character that's not a human. So that's really interesting. And so Mark Strutton leaves the show. I don't think it's ever stated why he left. Like Peter Davison and Jacqueline Fielding left because of poor production values and stuff. Maybe he just felt like because everybody else was leaving, it was time for him to go. Or maybe it wasn't even his choice. Maybe John Nathan Turner wanted a fresh start and asked him to leave. Who knows? But either way, this story ends with the Fifth Doctor and Perry as the Doctor promises to take her back home. But Perry's like, do you have to? I want to go exploring. In fact, when you picked me up, I just signed up a 3-month deal to go to Africa and explore the world. So is it alright if I travel with you, Doctor? And the Doctor's like, well, of course, why not? You've got 3 months on your trip, may as well give you 3 months. And so the story ends in a very New Who fashion in which turbulence happens and the Doctor welcomes Perry aboard the ship. And there you go, that's Planet of the Fire. Overall, I think it's a pretty decent story. It has some great moments with Turlough and his confronting his past, starting off as a coward, only to redeem himself, and not only that, being allowed to be let home, putting a great bookmark at the end of his story. The Master is a great villain here, though he might be a little bit cheesy. Anthony Ainley just doesn't know how to give a bad performance, and Peter Davison acts his socks off as he's jumbling all these feelings from past stories, and at the end of this story where he has to kill Chameleon. But it's not to say this story is particularly amazing. It might have dragged in a few places. The scenery on Sarn can get a bit repetitive as you spend a lot of time in very familiar sets and locations. But Fiona Cummins' directing really nails it on the head and makes you forget that you're watching a TV show from 1984. 1984 now. Yeah. And I say give it a try. It might not please everybody. It might go underneath the radar. And I don't think a lot of people will get a lot of enjoyment in this. There's nothing really that grounds it down to a fantastic story. But I say give it a watch, and maybe some people might find an underrated gem that they like in this story. And so there you go, that's Planet of the Fire. Now, in terms of canon, this leaves a gateway for Big Finish to have some stories with Peter Davison's Doctor and Nicola Bryant's Perry in their stories. In the TV, it feels much more closer together, and that these stories the next TV story happens right after this. But Big Finish have actually expanded it so that stories with Perry and the Fifth Doctor expand to years of Perry's life. And they even introduce another companion, Emerin, an Egyptian princess. However, I will not be tackling those stories, mainly because I don't have them and I haven't listened to them. But secondly, they just don't interest me. Not to say that they're bad by any of the stretch of the word. Like I said, I haven't listened to them. But to me personally, I think the story of the next adventure works a lot better if these two stories are back to back. So speaking of the next story, join me next time where the Doctor and Perry land on a planet where there's literally no remorse. And we have change and not a moment too soon. So join me next time for The Caves of Androzani, and we say goodbye to the 5th Doctor. I'll see you all next time. Ta-ra.